Hello, and welcome to this webinar today. We've called it Beyond Getting Children and Young People What to Do What We Want Them to Do and How to Build Strong Emotional Connections with Those That We Love. The content of the webinar today will look at the importance of how we connect with our children. And in the hecticness of day-to-day life, we can actually sometimes lose connection. So we can explore today how we can keep that connection even though we're caught up with other tasks, thoughts, and priorities. We'll look at simple ways that we can reconnect as parents and shift our relationship with our children away from just the practical managing and directing of our children to actually being with them and being present. Welcome. Thank you for coming and for watching this recording. I'm Laura Hawksley. I work for the YMCA Trinity Group as a mental health training and development coordinator. The YMCA have been commissioned to write and develop this webinar on behalf of the Suffolk Be Well, Feel Well campaign that's running throughout the whole of the year. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. The YMCA is a registered charity and it's a holder of the trusted charity mark. Therefore, training with us or watching our webinars also contributes to helping young people in the wider community and helping us fulfill our passion to help those young people achieve their potential in life and to move forward. So thank you. I'll go back just to this first slide here, and this explains who's commissioned this webinar. The Be Well, Feel Well campaign is aiming to help build a healthier Suffolk in 2023. And it's a partnership between Suffolk Mind, Public Health, communities, YMCA Trinity, and a range of other community groups that are getting together to look at ways that we can help people that are living in Suffolk. We picked the theme of Let's Connect, in part because actually this year's Children Mental Health Week had the theme of Let's Connect, but also because it is one of the NHS's 5 pillars of mental health. And we know that good, positive connections in our life can really build our well-being and our resilience. So the guidelines going ahead today is we ask you to keep a non-judgmental and accepting attitude. Please do use the question and answer function, and I will try and get to them as and when I can. And hold in mind both you, yourself, and your child. You know your child best and you know yourself best. So if you hold yourselves in mind, you can then use the information that you hear in this webinar in the best way that fits you. Much of what we'll talk about does apply to both neurotypical and neuroatypical children and parents and carers. But, make sure you adapt it so that it's relevant to yourselves. So we've got about an hour together. We're going to look at why humans need connection. How does feeling connected help us in day-to-day life? And come up with some simple tips and strategies to help bring connection into the day-to-day reality. There are many, many different ways and different things that we can connect to as human beings. So we're not just talking about connection with other humans, but also with nature, with animals, with moving things, whatever it is that is relevant to you and yourself. And we know that having connection to some form of warmth or life is really important. We can go right the way back to Jean Harlow's early experiments with baby monkeys way back in the 50s, 60s. And they found that you could give a baby monkey all of the physical things it needs, the food, the water, but actually they won't thrive unless they had some form of comfort, some form of connection, even if it was something as simple as a towel wrapped around, the metal feeding tray or something like that. And those little monkeys that did have something that gave them a sense of connection and a sense of warmth, they were the ones that moved on and thrived. So there's absolutely no right or wrong throughout this webinar at all. And there's no right or wrong in terms of how we connect within the broad parameters of positive connections or negative connections. The way that we connect changes across cultures, across personalities, across our neurodiversity, and across our likes and our dislikes on a personal level. It's very, very different. And as these 2 pictures show, it can be as simple as something like a touch and the way a child holds onto a hand, or it might be that actually you connect with people without eye contact, but actually just through leaning or just being present with them. And being aware of how we connect ourselves is really handy, to be honest, because some of us are very touchy-feely. Others can't bear the thought of a hug and really struggle with, holding hands, or they don't want physical proximity near them. Other people will connect with their friends and their family through the use of words and their tone of voice. And others are just there, alongside, step to step, and quite quietly connection people. And we connect with people all the time. So we connect with people in positive ways, but we can also disconnect as well. And so, for example, those moments when we retreat, perhaps if we're scared or we're angry, and that we don't want to be connected to a negative sense. For an example, a really angry parent telling a child off, then that child will disconnect. They switch off. Enough's enough. And the really lovely thing about human beings is that actually connection can be repaired. We can regain that sense of it. All of the photos throughout these slides come from the website Unsplash, and the credits for them are in our notes, and we'll send them out later. But thanks to Liv Bruce and Alexandra Sapnikova for these two pictures. So why do humans connect? The ability to connect is absolutely key to our survival across millennia. We are social animals. We interact, and we need to be with others of our kind to, most of the time, to actually thrive. If we go right the way back, to be able to find enough food to eat, to be able to walk far enough to take food back to the elders, and to be able to hunt, we need connection. And if we think about it in terms of our own lifetime, we need connection with someone or something to feed. We come out of the womb pretty much helpless. And because of that role of connection is absolutely vital to help us grow, to help us develop. So we're social animals. And the way that we connect with other people is totally shaped by the relationships and the experiences that we have in our childhood and throughout our lives. So it's something that can change and shift over time. And it can be different. We might connect with one person in one way and another person in a totally different way. So it's not the same across everybody in our life. And connection is often about adult to adult as well as adult to child. So, we need to think about it. And it can be adult to out in nature. Some people feel a really strong connection with trees and with the natural world, and others it's with their animals, their cats, their dogs, and so on. And it's worth taking this time to reflect about how we connect with other people, because it impacts on all of the relationships we have in our day-to-day lives, including those at work, those at home, with our partner, as well as with our children. So we actively seek connection. And what we see as well with young children, actually, to be fair, probably adults too, but actually definitely with young children, is that some connection is better than no connection at all. So sometimes behaving badly to get the response, even if it's a telling off from an adult, is reassuring to a child because it gives them a sense of connection when there wasn't any a minute before that. So what does connection do? What does it do to us physically? Physically, it can help us feel safe. So I'm talking here about positive connections. I'm talking here about, connections that are healthy. But I guess, any type of connection helps us feel safer than no connection at all, where we just feel completely adrift in the world. But we do need connections to be positive overall for us to be able to thrive. And when we have got that positive connection, then we are able to, it's almost like we're able to free up our brain space to be able to learn, to grow, to rest, to thrive, to develop, to be curious. And all of those activities are part of what makes us fully human. And we know that when we have a good connection with an adult, when we're younger, it helps us learn how to regulate our emotions. It helps us interpret the world and what's going on around us. And by regulating our experience of emotion, but also our physical, physiological experience of emotion can help reduce feelings of anxiety and help us work out who we are in the world and what our role is, what our place is. So what we know is that connection works both kind of emotionally and cognitively, but also physiologically. And in working physiologically can reduce some of the stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline and so on. And in reducing the presence of those chemicals in our body, actually we can lead healthier lives. It's good for our well-being as well. So we're going to look now at so many different ways that we connect and how we connect to other people. And thinking about positive and safe connecting, that is the key. It's so often about us being present, either physically there with our children or almost present in their minds. They know that we are thinking of them. They know that we are caring for them, loving them, and taking care of them as well. So it's about being present. It's about being interested. It's also about how we demonstrate that. So thinking about the words we use, our facial expressions, how touch we use, whether we're laughing, our posture. There's so many different things that come into it that it gives us a really wide range of techniques that we can use to change connections as well and to promote safe and healthy connections. And the thing with connection as well is that you'll see along the bottom of this slide, there's a little bit of a scale here from too little right the way across to too much. And getting that balance is important. And the reason I've chosen a picture of penguins is because penguins huddle in Antarctica to keep warm. They need the presence of other penguins to help them survive the winters. And what we've discovered about penguins is that they leave a gap of millimeters between each other when they're in their huddle. So they leave just enough space. And that just enough space is the optimum way of them staying warm and staying connected and surviving, quite frankly. If there's too little space between them, there's too big an air gap and they don't keep each other warm. That heat gets lost into the Arctic. And if they're too close together, actually the fibers that make up their feathers, they get squashed and they're not able to hold and keep the warmth there. And the penguins get cold as well. So again, it's this idea of thinking about balance, and that's what I'd like to call the Goldilocks effect, which I think is a great phrase, that we need just enough connection in our lives. And if we have too much connection, we run the risk of becoming a bit smothery, and too little connection can feel like can become emotional neglect. But those are the sort of two extremes. And as long as we're moving around the just about right mark, we don't have to be perfect and get it right all the time. In fact, sometimes it's actually quite helpful to get the connection wrong a little bit, because then our children have the chance to learn how to repair. And we have the chance to teach them how to repair and how to build other connections. So we're holding in mind this idea of balance. We would like just enough connection with the people in our lives to feel safe and to feel warm. And we've looked at the whole range of different things that we can do in terms of how we can connect. And this slide is about thinking about the ways that we can connect with our children. And like I said earlier, how we connect with our children, it's very different across cultures. So there will be different ways that will appeal to different people. And also our children will know and have a better understanding of how they connect with us and we connect with them than perhaps we realize and we understand. So, it works very much within families too. So I would like you to take a minute or so and just think about how you like to connect with your child. Are you huggy? Are you practical? Do you show your love through your cooking or through bedtime stories? And then take a minute or so to think about, how does your child like to connect with you? Though some children will bring toys, they'll bring a Lego figure, or they'll come and stand next to you while you're cooking supper and start telling you all about something on Minecraft or Roblox. Others will want to come for a cuddle, or they'll want to be really close, to hold hands, or for you to discuss and talk to you about certain things. And so every child has a different way of wanting to connect with the adults that are around them. And depending on how we are as people, it may or may not fit. And sometimes it's just the time of day as to whether or not it fits. So thinking about what your style of connection is useful. So are you someone that likes to get down and play? Are you good at pretending to play house or pour cups of tea? Or are you someone that finds that kind of play really difficult, but would rather do something with a child? So go for a walk, or climb the climbing frame, or explore the garden, or build Lego. And thinking about, it's also about how we do these things, but it's also about how we do it. So that idea of, if you are someone that can play or that can make things with a child, are you someone that can let them do it in their way if it's wrong? Or do you find yourself wanting to move into that I need to teach them how to do it properly mode? Or actually, this is a better way of doing it, so I need to show you. Because I think that's a really hard thing sometimes for a parent to step back and to just let your child tidy up and do things in their own way, if it's different to their own way. So holding that balance for ourselves about what we think is the right way versus doing a task to connect with our child, regardless of right or wrong, is really important. And I guess as well, thinking about, it's all right not to like some things. I can love my brother dearly, but he bored me to tears in terms of his Lego. But with hindsight, I wish I'd listened a little bit more, because that was his way of trying to connect in with his big sister. So it's sort of being able to suspend a little bit about what your response is and think about where are they coming from, why are they doing it. So we've got here some different ideas. So we've here some ideas about direct contact. So thinking about, hugs, holding hands, a massage might be something simple as, brushing hair, or helping your child, let your child fix your own hair, either way. So there are ideas about direct contact, connection. You can also connect through a shared interest and through common ground. So a shared sport, maybe, or, horse riding or football. Football's a really common one where parents will connect with their child. Connecting through play can be harder. It does depend on whether you like playing yourself or whether you ever had a chance to play as a child as well. But that can be actually really quite fun, and that's important. You can join your child in the things that they're interested in, and depending on what age they're at, might be totally different to what, it can be quite hard for us adults to get our head into that curiosity and wonder that a child has. But you can also flip it on its other head and invite them into things you're doing. So invite them into your hobbies and share with them the things that you like and you enjoy as well. And these are ways that you can use over the whole age range of childhood, right the way through to adolescence, with varying responses. And making things can be quite a nice way of doing it, especially with teenagers, for example, where you create a situation where perhaps there's minimal conversation, but you just both cook a meal together, or you sit next to each other while you eat a meal. You can build things, DIY, gardening, creating, making, a whole range of things. That the conversation there can be the connection about being in the same room together, but also about a task rather than about each other. And then the other idea we've got here, as you can see, is the active side of it, the doing something, going for a drive, listening to their music, asking them about what they like on TikTok, and following those side of things through in that way. So we've looked at some of the how, what, why, wheres, and we're going to move on now and think about the actual doing it. How do we go about connecting properly with our children? And this side here, I love all the little emojis on the dice, because it's a reminder to us to really think about stopping and checking in with ourselves and where we're at. So thinking about where we're at involves thinking about what we're doing, what's on our mind, what are the pressures we're facing, where have we just come from? And sometimes it might involve thinking like, what is the time of day? Or have I had supper? Or all of these other things that change our mood and our openness and our ability to be present. So noticing what you're feeling inside. So when your child comes up to you and is pulling on your arm, going, look at this, look at this. Am I checking in and going, right, okay, have I got time? Am I feeling impatient? Am I worried that I'm going to burn the supper, or that I've got to get this piece of work done, or that this task is there ahead of me? And then we can notice our thinking, noticing our feelings, and then also notice our physiology as well. Am I feeling tense? What does my face look like? Am I looking patient or am I looking impatient? And then once we've done the noticing, we can have a long out breath. So actually just breathe, because we breathe all the time. We don't ever stop breathing, well, generally. And actually just lengthening our out breath only takes a second or two, but it can give us that little bit of space to just reset and bring ourselves out of our adult concerns and cares and into the world of how we connect with our children. And so what we're doing here is taking control of our emotions rather than letting our emotions or situations control us. And that way, that's when it can help us encourage how we connect to our children. And then our children will stay receptive, actually. They'll stay open to working with us and being with us. And that can, and the bigger picture, make day-to-day life much easier, because when we have connection, it can be easier to do the day-to-day tasks like getting shoes on, getting out of the door to the nursery, or ensuring that your child comes home on time, or having some communication about homework, or whatever it is. So really the key message from this slide is to just check in and breathe and notice how and what you're thinking while you connect and talk to your child and respond to them. So we check in with ourselves, and then the next step is to see your child. And these quotes, this information is taken from a psychiatrist, neuroscientist called Dan Hughes, and he has them what he calls his refrigerator sheet. But Dan Hughes is an amazing neuroscientist who spent years and years studying children, and in particular studying children that are struggling. But he's pulled out several key things that he says helps build what he calls mindsight, which is like resilience in our children, and also with adults. This doesn't just apply to children. And one of his key wishes is for parents to spend time just observing their child and just being with their child. And this doesn't have to be for an hour or for a long period of time, but it can just be for a minute every now and again throughout the day. And what that does is it's several things, but first of all, it gives you time to observe and know your child. And so you have that connection of that proximity there. But what it also does is it allows them to experience you being present for them and experience themselves as being something that is interesting and loved and something that people want to be with. So he talks about and we're talking a little bit more about this technique he has called PACE. But one of the aspects of that is about curiosity. So that idea of quietening our own internal voices and just trying to understand what are your kids doing? What's going on? Trying to get rid of some of the conclusions that we've jumped to. And notice that, when your 14-year-old is standing in the kitchen, glaring at you, telling you that you know nothing, and that you're rubbish, which I have no idea if it's happening to any of you, but being there, looking at them and thinking, right, okay, so what's happening? Are they just being horrid to me, or is there other stuff going on? Are they feeling stressed from events in the day? Is there something else that they haven't understood, or something that's challenged them? And they're just trying to communicate that they want some time with me, but they're doing it in a way that's not necessarily charming. But that idea of understanding what's going on. And then the other time is about making a little bit of space and time. And actually that idea that you can show your kids who you are and who they are as well. And you can actually have time to listen to them, to understand their world, to see what is important to them. And to notice things that you might miss caught up in the day-to-day rush and busyness of day-to-day life. So I love that idea of the refrigerator sheet. And then the next slide talks more about pace, and you'll see actually the last two words, curiosity and empathy, are not on here yet, but they will be. So developed by Dan Hughes, as I said, these are the 4 principles of the foundation of connecting with children and young people, and actually also with partners and work colleagues and so on, in different aspects and ways. They support emotional regulation skills. So they support that ability for someone to understand how they're feeling and then influence it and change how they behave into a way that they want to behave. And the 4 of them work in several ways. They work psychologically, socially, helping us to mediate the patterns of relationships that we've had in our lives and mediate the behaviors that have developed from those. And they also work physiologically. So actually, they actually help us stay physically more chilled in our body and help us keep into a sort of rest and relax, or even just a calm state, rather than being an alert or aware state in our nervous systems. So his view, as I said, is that it should be used for everybody. And I think it just is so simple. And I quite like the idea as well that we know it's really nice when you go for a walk and someone walks at your pace. You're not rushing to catch them up or feeling like they're dragging behind you and you're having to slow down. You're just there, you're matching their pace. And play is a key part of that opportunity to laugh together, to have some fun, and also to learn about rules and what is and isn't okay. And sometimes a little bit of playfulness can help diffuse a situation and help reduce stress and anger. So, it's an important thing to do as and when you can. And like not taking yourself too seriously, having a bit of humor. And the physical actions of smiling and laughing changes the levels of stress chemicals in our bodies too. So play is good all the way around. And turning something, for example, a child that won't get their shoes on, if you can turn it into a game, and have a mini race, or you can pretend to put them on your ears until the child tells you that they go on their feet, actually can make what is quite a frustrating situation doable. And you both feel better at the end of it. Accepting is another example of that. Just where they're at and what they're at and who they are, and trying not to compare too much about whether you think they're behaving like a 4-year-old or a 10-year-old, or are they behaving at the age you think they should be behaving, rather than the age of what they know or what they can do. And accepting that actually all of them is okay and that behavior is just behavior. Taking away the idea that they're bad, but actually that behavior is not good. That behavior was bad, but you were good. And I think that is a really lovely one, because feeling accepted, it takes off a whole weight of worry, both of children and adults, doesn't it? Being accepted for who you are. Curiosity, we talked about already. And actually that idea that, dropping some of our preconceptions and just thinking, okay, where are you at? What are you about? And actually it's really nice, because if you're interested in them, they will learn that they are interested. And that means that when they have relationships with people in later life, they will want relationships with people that are interested in them too. And then finally, empathy. To be able to connect with people, we need to have some sense of empathy, some sense of understanding and insight into what is life like for them at the moment, what is going on for them. And we can have empathy with really gentle, caring, consistent and fair boundaries as well. And that actually we have that sense of walking alongside somebody, so that you can understand them and they know that you understand when things are tough. So things like, am I right that you see it like this? Or it sounds like your world is feeling like this at this point. Or one of the ones I use, which I know I'm a bit old and I'm far too uncool. However, give me a go. Try me out and see if you can make me understand what's happening for you at the moment. It doesn't always have much success, to be fair, but sometimes it does. So you've got Dan Hughes's pace, and we can use those with the following ideas that we have. So this idea of the non-verbal, which is absolutely a much less challenging way, especially actually for teenagers. Teenagers can find it really quite hard to have too much stimulation. So if we were thinking about wanting to connect in a stressful point in somebody's life, non-verbal ways might be either looking at them or walking alongside them, sitting alongside them, so that, you know, if you have a very distressed teenager, they might not want to look at you and they might not be able to find the words to connect, but they might appreciate just sitting side by side and watching a television program. Thinking about caring our warm, our facial expressions, you know, and how we hold our posture. Are you sitting there like that, or like that, or like that? Or what is the vibe that you're giving off? Because children pick it up, you know, they will pick up and they will worry about parents that are worn out and tired. And they'll see it as something that's their fault, rather than not necessarily understand that it might just be you've had a terrible day, or your boss has been a nightmare, or whatever it is, there's other stuff going on. Children won't always get that. Spending quiet time together. And I think sometimes there's a lot to be said about just being in the same room. And I think that's something that gets less and less if we're not careful. Because whilst teenagers want to have their own space, it is also important that they have time being connected in the same room as family, or on a walk, or just being listened to, rather than disconnecting, taking themselves away all the time and then struggling on their own. So I put this one in because it's about direction with connection. So it's that idea that connection can happen even during the most boring, tricky, bossy tasks that parents have to do with their children. And actually, like I said earlier, if we can be connected whilst we're trying to do those boring, bossy, day-to-day tasks, we will get them done. Maybe not so much quicker, but certainly calmer and with less stress. And that leaves both you and the child feeling better about life. So one of the simplest ways to maintain connection is to try and maintain your sense of calmness and the sense of being really clear and direct with your child. So making sure that you've actually said very, very clearly what you want your child to do, rather than what you don't want them to do. So often we'll say, stop mucking about, but we won't necessarily say, put your ball down and put your shoes on, we need to leave the house. So there's an idea about being very clear about what we want to do. And depending on our child's age, about whether or not we can join them in that task. You need to put the ball down. I need to pick up my bag and sort my bag out. You need to get your shoes on, and then I'll unlock the door and we'll head out. So you're telling them what you want to do. You're joining them with it. Sometimes it's really handy. And if it's a tricky situation where your child is behaving in a way you don't like, and, you know, they might be struggling or having an outburst or lashing out in some way, it's important to hold your ground, but firmly as well, and to acknowledge what it is that your child wants. So that idea of bringing the empathy in here, the idea of, I understand that you really wanted me to get those M&Ms in Sainsbury's, and I know you want me to buy them for you, and that you're disappointed that I'm not. However, I'm not buying them for you today. So there's a clarity there. There's an understanding that your child is disappointed, and maybe rightly so, maybe not. But it allows that little bit of connection to remain. And then finally, to state that behavior, like I said earlier, of what you want to see. So we're not buying the M&Ms today. I want you to put them down, and then we need to pay for the shopping and leave. And that way, again, it's that idea of helping their brains focus on what they do need to do. And if you can, state the positives. I'm afraid that you can't have those today, but on Friday, when you get your pocket money, you can get some, or whatever it is. I'm sort of pulling these ideas up from out of my head. So one of the biggest barriers to connecting with someone is when a sense of blame gets in the way, and a sense of it's their fault as a human being, or there's something wrong with them as a person. And that's why we've got this side here, which just focuses on this idea that the problem is the problem. And this is the same, to be fair, with relationships and so on, as adults, between adults as well. So the first thing we can try and do is externalize the feeling and keep the idea of feelings and behaviors as being separate rather than being set in a person and what a person is. So a child is a child no matter what they've done. And sometimes when we're really caught up in adult things and day-to-day life and stress, we don't always notice the joy that they're having in that moment or they're learning. What we will notice is what work it makes for us, or how we might feel if we're feeling embarrassed about that behavior, or we feel like it makes us look like a bad parent. And we can get taught up in telling them that they're bad and they're wrong. You are messy. You are dirty. And actually what we really want to say is, do you know what? That behavior has created the biggest amount of mess. Or, oh my goodness, look at all that dirt that's stuck on your skin. So we're separating it out from that person. We're not we're allowing the child to see themselves as separate to their behavior. And we're also, giving a clear boundary in there as well. We're separating and go, oh, do you know what? Paint is for paper, sweetheart, not for skin. But at the same time, we can bring in the fact that I can see how much you have just enjoyed painting that. Honestly, that must have been so much fun. Just wondering whether we probably should have put more of the paint on the paper. Yeah, and then we wouldn't have to do so much washing. And that way you're in it with your child as well. And you're noticing their joy and their delight. Because I think as well, we spend a lot of time as children, don't we, being told not to do things or not to be things. I love that picture. Avoid you and you always. You are naughty. Actually, no child is naughty. Their behavior is naughty. The emotion is okay. It's fine to be absolutely furious. I understand you are livid with me because I have just switched off the Wi-Fi. I get that. It's not okay to chuck your phone on the floor. That's not acceptable. And to see behavior as a form of communication as well. It's not necessarily being done to us, but it might be about our children telling us something as well. And I think that's quite handy too, because when, as communication changes with older children, and maybe it gets less in terms of verbal communication, and they come in, and it's really annoying because they come in and they just chuck their sports kit all over the floor, and they're saying, I need that by Thursday, and then they walk out. And on one level, you might be feeling really quite offended by how they've talked to us, they've not used the manners that we taught them, and so on. On the other level, what they're saying is, Mum, I still need you to help me. I still need the connection through doing my washing. I don't want a hug anymore, but I need to know you're still there by doing the washing. And so we can flip how we understand sometimes the teenager's behaviors. And the same with a child. If a child is in a restaurant and they're feeling ignored and they start to be naughty and banging a spoon on the table, the behavior might be about joy of the noise, or about saying, hang on a minute, I'm feeling ignored, I'm not feeling safe. I need to know you're there, rather than just being naughty. So we're going to look at a few phrases to help with connection too. And these come from a range of different sources. And I love this picture because here the mum's got right the way down to the eye level of her child. And I think that's lovely. It's as little children, we spend a lot of time with people towering over us. So getting down to their level can be really important and really fun. And actually phrases like, I hear what you're saying. That looks fun. Tell me what you're doing. I'm here for you. You seem disappointed, smiley, sad, just checking out what they're feeling, what they're thinking. And sometimes just actually acknowledging it's just good to be around you. That's fun. It was nice. And I think that it's really lovely because I think it's about acknowledging that there is a joy in having, hopefully, children, and that actually remembering to let them know that we enjoy it can be quite fun, because sometimes I think we can forget too. So I've got a video next, hopefully, that will work, just to summarize some of the points that we've been making here today. Now, it might take a little bit of time to okay. So I love that video. It just, I think, sums up really what I've been talking about for 45 minutes into a few minutes. And I hope that you'll be able to take that away with you, the importance of actually connecting with our child to help them feel safe and wanted and settled and free to explore and to learn and to grow and to develop. This slide here asks you to give us some feedback on our webinar, and there's a couple of ways you can do it. I would have sent out a SurveyMonkey link in the email that you've received with this directions to this recording in. You can go that way, or you can scan the QR code here with your phone camera, and it will open up a little survey that takes about 3 minutes or so to complete. It's very quick, if that, to be fair. And we really appreciate that, because the feedback that you give us will help us inform the other webinars that we write for the rest of the campaign this year. And it also helps us to continue to learn and develop. So I should just leave it here for a minute, give you time to scan it. Although with the modern technology, I guess you could press pause, because this is a recording, and then have time to scan it. And then I have just a couple of other slides to run through very quickly with some resources that could be useful to yourselves and so on. So Keep Your Head is a really, really useful website that's been developed by Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Children and Young People Services. It's well worth a visit. because it has loads of resources available, very, very easy to find for children, adults, professionals, as well as crisis advice, self-help, and local and national resources on there. So really useful if you have any concerns or worries, or you want to check anything out about how your children are doing, or for ideas as parents. It's a good resource to go to. Other excellent resources include Suffolk Mind, that has lots and lots of information from different kinds of struggles that children might be having, to actually things that we can do as parents and carers that can help with partners or children who are struggling with mental health as well. So again, really worth looking out for that, and worth keeping an eye out as well for the rest of the materials that will come through in the Be Well, Feel Well campaign over the year. Certainly the next webinars that we're looking at is on food and eating well to feel well. And then there's other ones that are coming up over the year, include one on sleep, one on privacy, one on community, and another on being in the moment, on attention, on being present, which fits, that's up in December actually, but it'll fit quite well with this one in terms of that, looking at building connection. This is a little information about mental health training and clinical services that YMCA offer, so please do have a read of that if you'd like to. And I'll finish with our references as well. So these will come out to you on the slides if you registered for that. But I'll leave this with the screen. As I say goodbye to you, thank you for listening. And I hope that we see you for the next webinars. Thank you. Bye-bye.